I am Norton, a 34-year-old software developer who thought I had everything figured out. For 7 years, my marriage to Amanda seemed picture perfect. We had our dream home in the suburbs, successful careers, and what I believed was a solid foundation of love and trust. That all changed when I came home early from a business trip last spring and overheard something I was never meant to hear. My wife was on the phone casually discussing how I could be exchanged for something better, like I was just another disposable item in her life. Before I tell you how my world shattered that afternoon, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever had that gut feeling something was not right in your relationship. I met Amanda at a mutual friend's barbecue 6 years ago. She stood out in the crowd with her infectious laugh and confident demeanor. We locked eyes across a crowded backyard, and within minutes we were deep in conversation about everything from our favorite hiking trails to our career ambitions. Amanda worked in marketing for a luxury brand company, and her passion for her work was immediately attractive to me. By the end of the night, I had her number, and within a week we went on our first date. Our romance was a whirlwind. We seemed perfect for each other on paper and in person. After dating for a year, I proposed during a weekend trip to the coast. The wedding followed 3 months later, a tasteful but expensive affair that Amanda orchestrated down to the finest detail. Looking back now, I should have noticed how focused she was on making sure everything looked impressive to our guests. At the time of our marriage, my career was on an upward trajectory. I had just landed a senior developer position at a promising tech startup, and the stock options alone had us dreaming of early retirement. Amanda was climbing the corporate ladder as well, impressing her bosses with innovative marketing campaigns and securing regular promotions. We bought a 4-bedroom house in an upscale neighborhood, filled it with furniture that Amanda assured me was what successful couples like us should have, and settled into what I thought was domestic bliss. From the outside, we were the couple others envied. Weekend dinner parties, annual vacations to Instagram-worthy destinations matching luxury cars in the driveway. Amanda kept our social calendar packed with events that always seemed to revolve around impressing others or networking with the right people. I went along with it all, believing this was what a power couple was supposed to look like. But there were signs, subtle at first, that something was not quite right. Around our 3rd anniversary, Amanda began critiquing things about me that had never seemed to bother her before. My wardrobe suddenly needed a complete overhaul. The way I spoke in professional settings needed polishing. The tech industry, which had always been my passion, was suddenly not prestigious enough compared to her colleagues in luxury marketing. I noticed Amanda spending more time scrolling through social media, sighing as she compared our home vacations and lifestyle to those of her wealthier friends. What had once been appreciative comments about our comfortable life turned into pointed observations about what we lacked compared to others. Our friends started to change too. My old college buddies were gradually phased out of our social circle, replaced by Amanda's co-workers and their spouses. At gatherings, I increasingly felt like an accessory rather than a partner. Amanda would introduce me with a quick mention of my job before steering the conversation toward topics where she could shine. If I told a story or made a joke that did not land perfectly, I would catch her slight wince or subtle eye roll. Still, I made excuses for her behavior. She was ambitious. She was passionate about living our best life. She just wanted us to reach our full potential. I tried to reignite our connection through surprise date nights, weekend getaways, and thoughtful gifts. Sometimes, these gestures would momentarily bring back the Amanda I fell in love with, but the effect never lasted long. By the time our 6th anniversary rolled around, physical affection had become rare, and quality time together usually involved discussions about career moves, home renovations, or which social events would put us in contact with the right people. I was trying to convince myself this was just a phase when I left for a business trip to Seattle last spring. The trip was crucial for our company. We were meeting with potential investors who could provide the capital we needed for our next phase of growth. I spent weeks preparing for the presentation, working late nights and weekends. Amanda seemed supportive, though she mentioned several times how the potential investment could finally move us into the financial bracket of her most successful friends. The meetings went even better than expected. The investors were so impressed that they made an initial commitment on the spot, cutting our trip short by a day. Excited to share the good news with Amanda, I decided to fly home early, and surprise her. I stopped by her favorite florist and picked up 24 roses. I made a reservation at the upscale restaurant where we had celebrated our engagement years ago. I was determined to reconnect with my wife and show her that I was just as committed to our future as she was. When I arrived home, I noticed Amanda's car in the driveway. I quietly entered the house, planning to surprise her with the flowers and the good news. That is when I heard her voice coming from the study, the door slightly ajar. She was on the phone, her tone casual and relaxed, in a way it rarely was with me anymore. "Norton's fine, but he's like a starter home. Eventually you trade up for something better." My hand froze on the doorknob as Amanda's words cut through me like a physical blow. I stood motionless, the bouquet of roses hanging limp at my side, as she continued her conversation with someone I guessed was her friend Stephanie. I mean, his company might take off, but even then we are talking middle management success at best. He does not have the connections or the social polish to really break through to the top tier. I could hear her pacing the familiar click of her heels on the hardwood floor. You should see Richard's circle of friends. These are people with real influence and family money. Old money. The kind of connections that open doors no amount of hard work ever could. And Richard has been so helpful introducing me around. He appreciates someone who understands the finer things, unlike Norton, who would be happy with takeout and Netflix every weekend if I let him. Each word felt like another piece of our life together crumbling away. I stood there paralyzed as she laughed at something Stephanie said. "Exactly. Look, marriage is partially a business arrangement, right? You bring your assets to the table, they bring theirs, and hopefully you both end up better positioned than you started. Norton was a good investment when we met, but I have outgrown what he can offer. I have been networking with Richard's circle for months now. There are definitely better opportunities out there." My stomach lurched. Richard was her boss, a divorced man in his 50s, who had always been overly friendly with Amanda. I had brushed aside my concerns, trusting my wife completely. Now her frequent late nights at the office and weekend work events took on an entirely different meaning. I backed away from the door silently, nearly tripping over my own feet in my haste to escape before she discovered me. I left the roses on the kitchen counter, grabbed my still-packed suitcase from where I had left it in the entryway, and fled the house before Amanda could finish her call. I drove aimlessly through the city, my mind replaying her words over and over. The casual cruelty with which she had dismissed our marriage and my value as a partner was staggering. I eventually checked into a hotel downtown, not trusting myself to face Amanda without completely falling apart. That night was one of the worst of my life. I paced the hotel room, alternating between disbelief, heartbreak, and flashes of intense anger. Sleep was impossible. Every memory of our relationship now required re-examination through this new, painful lens. I remembered how Amanda had described her previous boyfriend as a necessary step to figuring out what she really wanted. I recalled her comments about friends who had divorced. They upgraded their lives by upgrading their partners. Most damning of all, I remembered her reaction when I once questioned if we were becoming too materialistic. Being with the right person means never having to settle for less than the best, in anything. By morning, I realized these had not been isolated comments but glimpses of her true worldview, one where people were assets to be leveraged or discarded based on their utility. I was just another acquisition that had failed to appreciate in value, as expected. After a sleepless night, I made a decision that surprised even me. Rather than immediately confronting Amanda or serving her with divorce papers, I would return home and observe. I needed to know just how deep this betrayal went before deciding my next move. For the next week, I became a detective in my own marriage. I pretended the business trip had concluded as originally scheduled, acting normal, while quietly noting every interaction with new awareness. The evidence was everywhere once I knew what to look for. At a dinner with her colleagues, Amanda subtly steered conversations away from my recent professional success, instead highlighting connections to her wealthy college friends. When I mentioned my parents' upcoming anniversary, she quickly changed the subject, having always found my middle-class family background embarrassingly ordinary. While Amanda was showering one evening, I checked her phone, something I had never done before. The text messages with Stephanie confirmed my worst fears. They discussed exit strategies and trading up in between, discussing fashion trends and workout routines. Amanda had mentioned to Stephanie that Richard had introduced her to a recently divorced surgeon who found her refreshingly ambitious. Most revealing was discovering Amanda's secret Pinterest board titled Future Upgrade, filled with homes far beyond what we could currently afford vacation destinations for just the two of us, though the male figure in these fantasies was deliberately cropped or blurred, and even wedding rings more impressive than the one I had given her. The final piece fell into place when I checked our financial records. Amanda had been moving small amounts of money monthly to a private account I knew nothing about. Not enough to immediately notice, but over time she had accumulated a significant nest egg, presumably for her planned exit. By the end of that week, I had all the confirmation I needed. Our marriage had been a business arrangement from Amanda's perspective, and in her eyes the business was no longer profitable enough to maintain. With clarity came power. Now that I understood the true nature of our relationship, I could make informed decisions about my future. I took a personal day from work and consulted with a divorce attorney, laying out everything I had discovered. The attorney was sympathetic but direct. The sooner I moved to protect myself, the better. I spent the next few weeks quietly preparing. I gathered important documents, took inventory of our joint assets, and secured copies of our financial records. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank and began transferring my portion of our savings. I found an apartment in a neighborhood Amanda would never visit, signing a 6-month lease and arranging for the essential furniture I would need. Most surprisingly, during this preparation period, I received a call from a competitor of my current company. They had heard about the successful investor meeting and wanted to discuss a director-level position with significantly better compensation. I had declined their overtures in the past, out of loyalty to my team, but now the opportunity felt like a sign. After 2 interviews, they made an offer that exceeded my expectations. I accepted without telling Amanda. As my exit plan came together, I also began reconnecting with friends I had lost touch with during my marriage. My college roommate Tom was surprised but pleased to hear from me after nearly 2 years of silence. Over beers at our old favorite pub, I shared a sanitized version of my marital troubles. His response was eye-opening. "Honestly, man, we all wondered what happened to you. After you married Amanda, it was like you disappeared into her world. We tried to include you both for a while, but she always had some reason why our gatherings were not worth your time." I discovered similar sentiments from other old friends. One by one, they had been filtered out of my life because they did not fit Amanda's vision of our social circle. They had careers she did not find impressive enough, or homes in neighborhoods she considered beneath us, or simply attitudes toward life that valued experiences over appearances. I also rediscovered old hobbies Amanda had subtly discouraged. I joined a weekend hiking group, started playing basketball again at the community center, and even pulled my old guitar out of storage. Each reclaimed piece of myself strengthened my resolve. The final step was planning the confrontation. I wanted it to be private, but on my terms. No dramatic public scene, no opportunity for Amanda to manipulate the narrative. I decided on a dinner at our home, telling Amanda I had a special announcement about my career. This piqued her interest, as career advancement was one of the few topics that still engaged her enthusiasm about our partnership. I prepared her favorite meal, opened an expensive bottle of wine she had been saving for a special occasion, and set the stage for what would be our final evening as a married couple. Amanda arrived home from work in high spirits, clearly anticipating news of a promotion or bonus. She changed into one of her designer dresses, the kind she reserved for important social occasions, and joined me in the dining room with an expectant smile. "This is quite the setup," she said, eyeing the elaborate table setting and candles. "You must have really good news. Did the investor deal come through even bigger than expected?" I smiled and poured her a glass of wine. "You could say, I have been doing some reevaluating of my assets and future prospects." She raised an eyebrow, intrigued by my use of financial terminology. "That sounds promising. Tell me more." I maintained a calm conversational tone as I continued. "I have been thinking about something you said recently about trading up for something better when the opportunity presents itself." Her smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "What do you mean I heard you, Amanda?" That day, I came home early from Seattle. I heard you talking to Stephanie about how I was just a starter home you were planning to trade up from." The color drained from her face. She set down her wine glass with a shaking hand. "Norton, you must have misunderstood." "I do not think I misunderstood anything," I replied, still keeping my voice steady. "You said our marriage was a business arrangement, that you have outgrown what I can offer, and that you have been networking for better opportunities through Richard. Those seem like pretty clear statements to me." Amanda switched tactics, her eyes filling with tears that I now recognized as calculated rather than genuine. "I was just venting to Stephanie. You know how she exaggerates everything. I did not mean any of it. The thing is, Amanda, I might have believed that if it was an isolated incident. But once I started paying attention, I saw the pattern. The secret Pinterest board, titled Future Upgrade. The texts with Stephanie about exit strategies. The separate bank account you have been funneling money into." Her tears dried up, instantly replaced by cold anger. "You went through my private things, you spied on me, I investigated what I already knew was happening. There's a difference." Amanda stood up, abandoning all pretense of innocence. "Fine. So what now? You want a divorce? Because I had some private conversations about feeling stuck. Everyone has doubts sometimes, Norton. That does not mean I was actually planning to leave." I smiled sadly. "That is where you are wrong. I do not think you were planning to leave yet. You were waiting for a better option to be fully secured first. But see, that is where we differ. I don't view relationships as transactions where I am constantly evaluating if I can trade up." I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a manila envelope on the table between us. "To answer your question about what happens now, I am giving you something better." "Divorce papers," she scoffed, not touching the envelope. "That is your idea of something better." "Freedom," I corrected her. "I am giving us both the freedom to find what we really want. You clearly want someone with more social status and wealth than I currently provide. And I have discovered that what I want is someone who values me for who I am, not what I can give them or how I make them look to others." Her expression shifted from anger to calculation. I could almost see her mind working, assessing what leverage she might still have. "You are making a huge mistake. We built this life together. You will be starting over from nothing." That is when I revealed the final part of my plan. Actually, I have already started over. I have a new apartment, a new job, with a considerable raise, and I have rediscovered old friendships and interests that make me happier than I have been in years. The divorce agreement in that envelope is more than fair. You get the house. I take my retirement accounts, and we split the rest of the assets equally. Amanda stared at me with growing realization that she had lost control of the situation. "You planned all this behind my back. While pretending everything was normal, I learned from the best," I replied without malice. "You taught me how to smile at someone while planning their replacement." That night, I left our house for the last time, carrying only my personal belongings and a profound sense of having reclaimed my dignity. The divorce process was smoother than I expected, though not without emotional turbulence. Amanda initially tried to contest the generous settlement I had offered, hoping to claim a portion of my new job's compensation package. When her lawyer advised that her position was weak, especially given the evidence I had collected, she reluctantly signed the papers. What followed was Amanda's campaign to control the narrative among our social circle. According to her version, I had abandoned her without warning, possibly for another woman. Some mutual acquaintances accepted her story without question, but others reached out to hear my side. I declined to engage in character assassination or public drama, simply stating that we had different values and expectations for marriage. Those first few months on my own were challenging, despite my preparations. I had grown accustomed to sharing my life with someone, and the silence of my new apartment sometimes felt oppressive. There were nights I questioned my decision, wondering if I had overreacted or if I would ever find a genuine connection again. Therapy became my lifeline during this period. My counselor helped me recognize the subtle ways Amanda had eroded my self-confidence and isolated me from my support network. She helped me understand that my worth was not determined by my usefulness to others or my status in society. What surprised me most was the support that emerged from unexpected places. My parents, who had always been politely distant with Amanda, rallied around me with practical help and emotional support. Colleagues from my old company kept in touch, inviting me to social events and introducing me to their wider circles. Even Amanda's cousin Rachel, who had always seemed to see through her facade, reached out to offer encouragement. My new job provided not just financial security, but a fresh environment where I could be valued for my skills and ideas, rather than how I fit into someone else's life plan. I threw myself into challenging projects, earning respect from my team and recognition from leadership. For the first time in years, my professional accomplishments felt fully my own, not steps on a ladder to meet someone else's expectations. My apartment gradually became a home that reflected my actual tastes rather than a showpiece designed to impress others. I hung art that spoke to me, arranged furniture for comfort rather than appearance, and created a space where I felt genuinely at peace. The real healing came through rebuilding connections based on authenticity. Weekly basketball games, hiking excursions, and jam sessions with old and new friends filled my calendar with events I actually looked forward to. I dated casually, taking time to understand what I truly wanted in a partner, rather than rushing to fill the void Amanda had left. Almost exactly 1 year after our divorce was finalized, I ran into Amanda at a restaurant downtown. I was having dinner with colleagues, celebrating the successful launch of a new project. She was across the room, with an older man, wearing an expensive suit, whom I recognized from photos as one of Richard's wealthy friends. Our eyes met briefly across the crowded space. She looked immaculately put together, as always draped in designer labels and perfectly coiffed. But something about her smile seemed strained, her laughter a beat too loud. The man beside her checked his watch repeatedly, his attention clearly elsewhere, despite her animated gestures. As I was leaving, we passed near her table. Social convention demanded at least a brief acknowledgement. "Hello, Amanda. I hope you are well," I said simply. She glanced at her companion, who was absorbed in his phone, before responding, "I am fantastic. Leonard here is on the hospital board and just bought a summer home in the Hamptons." The familiar name, dropping the need to establish status, felt sad rather than impressive now. "That's nice," I replied, feeling no urge to counter with my own accomplishments. "Take care." As I walked away, I heard her companion ask disinterestedly, who was that? I did not wait to hear her response. It no longer mattered how she categorized me in her narrative. What mattered was the profound lesson I had learned through this painful chapter. Real love does not treat people as commodities to be traded up from when something shinier comes along. Genuine connection is not measured in social status or material possessions, but in mutual respect, support, and acceptance. The something better I had given both of us was the chance to live authentically. For me, that meant building a life where I valued myself enough not to accept being anyone's stepping stone. For Amanda, perhaps it meant continuing her search for the external validation she craved. Either way, we were both free from a relationship built on false premises and hidden agendas. Today, I no longer measure success by comparison to others or worry about meeting arbitrary social standards. I have found richness in authenticity, in connections based on genuine appreciation rather than utility. The peace that comes from knowing my worth is not determined by my market value to potential partners has been worth every difficult moment of the journey. Have you ever had to walk away from a relationship where you were undervalued to find something better for yourself? Share your experience in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life lessons. And if you know someone who might need to hear that they deserve better than being someone's starter home, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most valuable upgrade is not in trading partners, but in recognizing your own worth.